Hey guys, today we're taking a look at the Carl Zeiss Touit 12mm f2.8 lens for Sony E mount and Fuji X mount. Let's get to it, shall we? Now this is an APS-C sensor lens, so it's not really intended for full frame cameras. The Touit line actually preceded the Batis line for Sony E mount. And when you look at a Touit lens, you can see the family lineage. It looks like a Batis, doesn't it? And it actually shares a lot in common with the Batis. In fact, at first glance, you might think it is a Batis, because with this line of lenses, once again, the lens hood is seamlessly integrated into the design. Once again, Zeiss has chosen a rubber focusing ring, rather curiously. But what's missing here? Well, first of all, there's no fancy cutting edge OLED display on top of the Touit lenses. So on the Sony E mount, you get no aperture ring. Fuji X mount, you do have an aperture ring, which I'm told was rather hastily added to the Touit. The other key difference between the Touit line of lenses and the Batis concerns the weather sealing. There is no weather sealing on a Touit. And whereas with the Batis, you would have the Zeiss blue rubber ring around the edge of the lens mount. With the Touit, you do not. So this is not a lens that you want to go out into a thunderstorm and do your shooting with. However, it is a fantastic lens. You get an ultra wide angle field of view. Now 12 millimeters on an APS-C sensor translates to about 18 millimeters full frame equivalent. Any way you look at it, this thing is super wide, and it's actually a lot of fun to shoot with. Is it sharp? Yes, of course this lens is sharp. This is a Carl Zeiss prime lens. It's going to be sharp. With a prime lens, you're going to get that little extra optical acuity, also known as sharpness. You also get a relatively bright aperture at f2.8. So it's reasonably good in low light. You're going to love the ultra wide field of view. You can get some really interesting shots. And this lens does not feature a lot of distortion. You know, there are a lot of ultra wide lenses that distort straight lines so dramatically. In this case, the distortion is well under control. For you Zeiss fanatics out there, this is a Distagon design. And this lens is a featherweight. Zeiss has constructed the lens out of aluminum and high quality plastic and a smattering of rubber. But at the end of the day, it's a very lightweight, tossable lens. This is a lens you can put on your camera and carry all day long. I wouldn't hesitate to put this lens in my backpack if I was going overseas. With this ultra wide angle, it's great for architecture, it's great for landscape. It's not really great for shots of people, but you can get some interesting shots of people in the context of their environment if you're willing to accept some distortion of facial features. When you're photographing people with this lens, you want to keep the person near the center of the frame. The closer they get to the outside of the frame, the worse the distortion is going to appear. When we talk about Carl Zeiss lenses, obviously we pay a slight premium to get the blue badge on the side, but what are you really getting? Certainly you're getting innovative design. The design to me is distinctive and forward thinking. These Touit lenses, much like the Batis lenses, have a unique appearance that exudes originality. But something else you're getting with Zeiss lenses, I believe, is color. And this is a characteristic of photography that sometimes is hard to explain. Everybody can look for sharpness, but you buy Zeiss lenses for more than sharpness. Color is really the secret sauce of Carl Zeiss lenses. There's something about the color that these lenses produce that I simply can't get out of comparable glass from Sigma and Sony. So personally, that's why I buy Zeiss lenses, because I love the color. Of course, I also love the sharpness and the optical performance across the frame. I love the micro contrast. Nobody really buys an ultra wide angle lens for bokeh, but when you open it up to f2.8, you can actually get some interesting shots with some pleasing bokeh. And this lens has a wonderful minimum focusing distance of right around 6 inches. So you can get up really close to your subject and have some very close ultra wide angle shots. It also, of course, allows you to work with an up close subject while keeping the background into frame. So I love the minimum focusing distance of this lens. Now these Touit lenses were among the first lenses from Carl Zeiss that deliver autofocus. I find the autofocus performance quite acceptable using firmware 2.0. The 1.0 version of the firmware did not support phase detect autofocus. So you want to make sure you've got your firmware updated. Unfortunately, if you don't have the updated firmware, you're going to have to send your lens back to Zeiss for the update. Thankfully, my lens came with the new firmware installed, and all new Zeiss Touit lenses should have the latest firmware installed, again, which is 2.0. If we take a look at the front element of the lens, you'll see, once again, a rather bulbous front element that, for my taste, is a little too exposed to potential damage. It uses 67mm front filter threads. You can see it's got the T-star coating. Like with these Zeiss lenses, they've got glass coatings that reduce flare and increase contrast. Typically, to protect the front element, I'm putting a UV filter on mine. I might remove that filter if I know I'm in a safe environment and I want maximum optical acuity. The build quality of the Touit line is slightly below that of the Batis. This feels kind of like a Batis lens's little brother. It's lighter in weight, which is nice, but the lens hood to me has a little more flex to it. It's just a little bit thinner, high-grade plastic, and the lens itself feels of comparable construction. I mean, I think the rubber focusing ring is almost identical to that on the Batis, at least as far as I can tell. This lens is made in Japan under the strict supervision of Zeiss technicians, and Sony has really had nothing to do with the design or production of this lens. When it's time for the lens to be serviced, it will go to Zeiss and not Sony, which frankly is a plus in my book. Ironically, the Touit lenses are something of a value these days because there have been price reductions in recent years as Sony has gone on to focus more on their full frame cameras. That means bargains for shooters of APS-C Sony cameras. For me, I could not resist the lure of the 12mm prime from Zeiss. Even though it's an APS-C sensor lens and will not provide full coverage on a full frame sensor, I'm willing to live with the compromises involved with having a prime lens instead of a zoom in exchange for getting Zeiss optics and Zeiss colors. So that's a look at the Carl Zeiss Touit 12mm f2.8 lens. I love this lens, and I will quite happily toss this lens into my bag to take anywhere on planet Earth. Great for ultra wide angle shots in any environment. If you want to pick up your own Touit lens, be sure to click the link in the YouTube description for this video and it will take you straight to the relevant page where you can read other reviews of the Zeiss Touit. If you are new here, please subscribe to my channel here on YouTube because we'll be reviewing more Carl Zeiss lenses in the very near future as soon as I can get my eager little hands on them. Until next time, LOLOHO.
If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you disliked it, give it a thumbs down. Feel free to leave a comment. And of course, don't forget to subscribe.